Good morning and welcome to the VSA Morning Miner. It's Wednesday, the 22nd of March, and I'm joined by David Scriven today. Paul is at another event and Andrew is still on the road. So, David, how are you?
Very good indeed, although it's a bit grisly out there with the weather. But anyways, we'll put that aside and kick off, how about with Kenmare 2022, a record year, tracking to guidance, despite a lightning strike, divvy up, and some pretty encouraging news.
Yes, last year obviously benefited from strong mineral sand prices and operational performance. So revenue was up 18% year on year to $478 million. Obviously, inflation did have an impact, so costs were up 13% year on year in dollar terms to $217 million. But mineral sands, it's quite tricky to do unit costs in the same way as you do for other metals, but on a co-product basis these were lower because of the higher byproduct revenues in rutile and zircon, meaning that net margins were stronger. So EBITDA was up 39% to $298 million, and that strong profitability with a really impressive improvement in the balance sheet, a $110 million swing to net cash of $28 million at the end of the year, and as a result of that the dividend is up 66% to 54.31. So all round pretty strong performance, but the share price still within the same trading range that it's been in for about 2 years, so not much reflected there. I think that lightning strike you mentioned, which Paul and I talked about recently, has had a bit of an impact on the 2023 outlook, but given how much a stronger position the company's in, it seems odd that it's stuck in that trading range.
Yeah, and I'd agree. I would have thought it should break out with those robust results. But picking up on that theme of increased costs, I wanted to move it to Alitalia Mining, who I think going forward are going to be lowering their electricity prices, and they've got a solar plant. So they've got an improved Q4 22. Perhaps you could articulate a little bit more on that.
Yeah, so their Q4 production was up 6.5%, but with the price impact, for copper, revenues were flat. That said, EBITDA was down 65% year on year on the back of the European power crisis, their operations being in Spain. There's two things that should help them. Firstly, that they've fixed their power supply agreement. I'm not quite sure at what level, so obviously power prices have changed quite a lot over the last couple of months with the mild winter, so where that nets out I'm not quite sure, but solar farm coming on this year, 50 megawatts of power, should help them reduce their reliance on the grid and that exposure. It is pretty tricky finding a low risk copper producing jurisdiction anywhere in the world. There seem to be issues wherever you go, and I think that probably explains why actually the Atalaya share price isn't that far from where its recent highs have been, despite that drop in profitability, just because there are so few pure play copper producers around.
Yeah, and you've got 55 million euros cash on the balance sheet, so at least they're in a strong position from that perspective. But talking of strong, the PFS for Atlantic Lithium had really robust numbers. I think IRRs of well north of 200%. But they've given a DFS update.
Yep. Atlantic Lithium still recovering from the short seller report recently, and some more news to show the plans to improve the project further. We heard the other day about drilling plans, infill and extension drilling. We saw in the recent DFS just how much incremental drilling can add to the NPV value. But now this is looking at the sort of optimization of the process plant, in terms of crushing and new revenue streams, from things like selling fines as direct shipping or byproducts like feldspar. Each of these look like relatively modest incremental changes, but I guess the view is that each of these together, and combined, will add up to something significant.
Indeed. Perhaps we're probably drawing things to a close, but maybe you could make just a final comment on Sierra Madre.
Yes, Sierra Madre is still suspended, pending the acquisition of the La Guitarra mine from First Majestic. But one of the last key hurdles to completion of that transaction was announced yesterday with approval from the Mexican antitrust agency. So that acquisition now drawing to a close, which should enable the shares to start trading again soon. First Majestic yesterday announced the suspension of their Jerritt Canyon operations that they only bought less than 2 years ago. So that stock was down quite sharply, as that delivered about 20% of their revenue. So they will be keen for Sierra Madre to add some value at La Guitarra, as they will be key shareholders there. But not quite sure yet what the timing these exchange related things can grind through, but hopefully in the next few weeks.
Great. Unless there are any further things you'd like to add, let's wrap it up and wish our listeners a very good day.
All right. Thanks, David. Speak to you soon.